Hello and welcome to another episode of Laptop Retrospective, and today we have... Guess who's coming to dinner? It's another Hewlett-Packard. Now, HP is kind of an interesting company because I've actually owned a fair few of these machines, especially when I was younger, and while I don't look back on them too terribly fondly now because they don't age very well, at the time they were great machines, so I can't really fault them too heavily for that. Now, this one right here is a Pavilion 11X2. More specifically, it's the H110NR model. Now, you don't often see a Pentium sticker anymore. It's normally a Core i something. And it's running the Pentium N3520, which can apparently turbo boost up to 2.42 gigahertz. Everything else is pretty much on board. So 4 gigs of 1330 megahertz DDR3 low power RAM and a whopping hard disk of 64 gigs. So this is a content machine, it's a cloud machine, but it's not going to be storing all of your stuff. That's simply not going to happen. Another thing that this unit was particularly favored for and kind of got a reputation of is two things. First off is it has Beats audio. Ooh. Now we'll see how well that audio actually does. The other thing that it was fairly good at is it has this little latch here that if you push it to one side, you can actually detach it. So this is a tablet. And on the bottom there, it actually has duplicate ports. So micro SD card, headphone, microphone combo jack, and a place for the charging cable. So there is a small battery inside of the tablet component there, and then your keyboard essentially acts as a port expander and replicator. So you've got HDMI, full SD card, regular USB, power port. On the other side, another USB, and your headphone microphone combo jack. And then inside the base itself, you have a couple of batteries hanging out to extend the life of the device. So it's actually kind of an interesting mix of what could have been and what became of a lot of trends. I will mention that one of these USB ports is 2, one is USB 3. So now that we've kind of walked through the basic ports, and I have to say, it's actually a pretty solid little machine, let's go ahead and take a look inside and see if we can find out how and why they built this particular machine the way they did. To start our disassembly, we first are going to do the tablet component. And just so I have a soft surface to rest one of the corners on, I'm going to bring out the towel. And if we take a look at the bottom here, there is no screws whatsoever. So this is all clipped into place. So take a guitar pick or your favorite MasterCard gift card that has $2 left and you're never going to use again. And where I suggest you start is actually the micro SD card slot. Don't stick it in very far, but just enough to get some leverage in between the case, and then start to work your way around. These clips actually will come off pretty easy. When rounding the corner on these machines, just make sure that your card is in there and keep going no matter what around the edge, because there are no clips along the very edge. You just want to make sure that you're moving it along, and then you can pop the top as well. Once all the clips have popped, this will free float and you can remove the cover. So even though there is a protective lens there for the web camera, it's thankfully not connected, which means removing this is not the worst thing in the world. We can see some copper pieces here that connect actually to the Wi-Fi card of all things, which is kind of an interesting place to put them. What we have in here is actually pretty bare bones. So let's take a look. So over here in the bottom left-hand corner, we do have our CMOS battery hanging out. Moving our way over here is just a series of connectors. Our micro SD card reader is there as well. And we can actually see our 2 speakers for the tablet over here and over here. I suspect that's probably the ribbon cable for the display itself. And these 2 huge heat shields are actually covering pieces of battery. And they are secured in there as well with pieces of copper, what looks to be tape. Over here is the M2 SSD. So you could swap this out for a 64, or from a 64 to something, you know, that would actually be useful in size. And then of course you have your Wi-Fi card hanging out all the way over here. And really that is it for upgradability. The RAM is on board, the batteries are behind here. There really actually isn't a whole lot to see unless you are servicing internal components. And because this one is on loan, this is about as far as I'd like to go, because there is some copper tape in a couple of places I don't want to rip or tear. But as you can see, it's pretty cozy in here in terms of all the components. There really isn't a whole lot of wasted space. For the base disassembly, there are 2 visible screws and there's one underneath each of these rubber feet. An important technique to use when you're prying, if you're doing it with a blade, is you want to get in as low as possible, so right underneath, push in, and then you want to twist with the edge that is not sharp. That way you don't actually cut anything. Once all the screws have been removed, and there are 2 under each of those back feet, you are still going to have to pry the case off. So once again, I would encourage that you start around the SD card port, just because it's already recessed and the bottom part of this makes up the bottom part of that. And just lightly encourage these two to separate. Once you have gone around with your credit card and popped all the tabs, you can go ahead and remove the bottom to see the biggest battery in the entire unit. And this one is a 21 watt hour battery, and it takes up the majority of what's here. Obviously, to service trackpad or keyboard is going to require essentially disassembly of everything. But as we can see, there's actually quite a bit of room inside here. So you've got lots of room for the battery to breathe. The bottom of this is passively cooled. There are no fans present actually in, I believe, the top or the bottom of this chassis. But as you can see, it's fairly well reinforced where it needs to be with these metallic sheets. And it's also very clearly labeled what everything is, which is also kind of cool if you need to service this in manuals or scarce. So with that being said, let's go ahead and put this fella back together. In terms of the inside of the machine, things are actually okay, is how I would describe them. Your keyboard can only go so far back in terms of its tilt, unfortunately. And the keyboard, while it is robust, is a little too small. One of the things I found when I was typing, that often when I was reaching for the enter button, if my hands shift, for whatever reason my pinky kept missing it. That just could be me not being used to the keyboard. The trackpad, very good, swift and responsive, as well as the touch screen, well, it sometimes works. I'm not 100% sure how that was designed to actually function, if it is indeed a tablet, or if the tablet component probably only works once this is detached. We'll check that in a second. One of the things that I did want to test, though, were these Beats Audio speakers. So let's play a piece of music and see how things go. Very high pitch, clear, but as one might suspect, not a whole lot of gravitas yet. Let's try another one. Yeah, so the speakers are clear, but I'm honestly not that terribly impressed with them. The highs are quite good, but lows are almost non-existent. So if you are a person that truly enjoys an audio experience, well, you probably have a set of headphones and know better. So for the detach functionality, it works well enough. And once the screen is removed, auto rotate is on and the touch functionality works. But oddly enough, the touch functionality does not work so long as the tablet is docked with the unit. And it's probably worth pointing out that the screen is pretty glare filled. And let's see if we can make that any better by adjusting any settings. That's a little better in terms of glare, but not necessarily a very bright setup. And there's also, from what I can tell, no method to really adjust that unless you're going deep into the settings. The tablet itself has 3 buttons: power, volume up and down, clearly designed for content consumption as a device overall. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, well, I hope you enjoyed the video. This was an interesting unit to take a look at. It's not very often that 2-in-1 tablets that actually detach make its way to a release, and even then, rarer still that I get the opportunity to look at them. So a special shout out to the individual that allowed me to loan this machine to show it to you folks. This is really not a laptop that I would personally be interested in, because what it is strong in is not what I need. And that's really what it comes down to. This is very much a tablet form factor first and a laptop second. And while that is going to definitely meet many of your needs out there, it doesn't really quite have the power or the space that would be acceptable for what I would be using it for. If they had configurations with more onboard RAM, and if it, swap out the drive, and well, even then the processor isn't exactly what you would call a powerhouse either. So really not a machine that I will be dabbling with a whole heck of a lot, but at all the same, it is really cool to see what different companies are doing to meet the needs of the consumer. If you enjoy this sort of content, I would encourage you to hit that subscribe button. It really does help. And of course, if there's anyone out there that you think would be interested in seeing this video, then please, by all means, share. And I will see you next time.